Imagine a transaction so immense, so consequential that the currency used to pay for it isn't gold
Yeah.
or silver.
Right. It isn't property either.
Exactly. The currency is, well, it's an exact anatomical sequence of human suffering. Usually, when you hear historical accounts of ancient executions, they just sound like brutal, chaotic facts.
Yeah, just a violent sequence ending in tragedy.
Right. But today we're taking a deep dive into a text that claims one specific Roman execution was actually, well, it was a meticulously calculated spiritual receipt.
Which is fascinating because it completely upends how you read the narrative. I mean,
Yeah.
it demands that you stop looking at the events as just some random sequence of historical torture.
Yeah, and start viewing them as this highly structured, almost architectural framework where every single physical wound serves a highly targeted purpose.
Exactly. It's so intentional.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating theological and literary framework known as the sevenfold blood of redemption.
And this framework takes the narrative of the crucifixion of Jesus, right? And it moves chronologically.
Yeah, starting from the Garden of Gethsemane all the way to his final breath on the cross. And it basically identifies 7 distinct moments where blood was shed.
And we're going to follow that exact chronological progression today.
Mm.
The focus here is really on the evolution of the sacrifice. We want to look at the mechanics of how theologians and Bible teachers map this grand cosmic story of human redemption onto these 7 very visceral, very physical events.
And just to set some ground rules before we get too far in, to be clear to everyone listening, we are approaching this as an objective exploration.
Right. Totally neutral.
Yeah, whether you come to the subject with a deep theological background, or maybe you're simply fascinated by the, literary and historical architecture of ancient texts, our mission today is to unpack how this framework operates.
We just want to understand how millions of people find a complete tapestry of meaning in this specific sequence.
Exactly. And I like to think of this framework as a prism.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because usually people view the crucifixion as one massive singular event, like one blinding beam of light.
Right. It all just blurs together.
But this concept takes that event and passes it through a prism, breaking it down into 7 distinct rays of meaning. And each ray, each shedding of blood, has its own specific target.
It's compartmentalized.
Exactly. It is aimed at redeeming a different, highly compartmentalized part of the human experience.
That visual of the prism is incredibly helpful, especially because to see that first ray of light, you actually have to rewind the timeline.
You do.
You have to start before any physical violence occurs at all. The entire narrative begins in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Right, so the journey begins with extreme emotional and spiritual trauma, not physical punishment.
Right.
I mean, Luke's account describes Jesus in absolute agony, praying so intensely that his sweat was, quote, as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And, as someone analyzing this objectively, I have to ask, is the text claiming this is a biological reality, or is this just a dramatic metaphor used by the author to build narrative tension?
Because sweating blood sounds like pure hyperbole, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a total exaggeration.
Well, it sounds like a metaphor until you look into the medical literature.
Yeah.
There is a rare but well-documented clinical condition called hematidrosis.
Hematidrosis, okay.
Yeah. And it occurs under circumstances of extreme, basically incomprehensible emotional and psychological distress.
Oh, wow.
The internal pressure and anxiety become so severe that the capillaries surrounding the sweat glands literally burst. So blood actually mixes with sweat and exudes through the skin.
Wait, really? That's a literal documented physical reaction to stress.
It is.
Yeah.
It's incredibly rare, but it happens.
Mm.
So the theology here positions the very first drop of blood not as the result of a Roman whip, but as the physical manifestation of carrying a crushing internal burden.
So it's categorized as the blood of surrender, right? Because the phrase used in the narrative is, not my will, but thine be done.
Precisely. The argument is that the internal battle has to be won before the external battle even begins.
That makes a lot of sense. And, the symmetry of the setting is impossible to ignore, too. It starts in a garden.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, you don't need a theology degree to know the biblical significance of gardens. It creates this perfect, poetic mirror to the Garden of Eden.
It is a totally deliberate reversal. Because if you think about it, in the first garden paradise, the first Adam chooses his own will.
Right.
Which fractures humanity's relationship with the divine. But here, in a garden of darkness and suffering, the second Adam, which is how Jesus is often referred to, chooses to surrender his will.
initiating the repair of that fracture.
Exactly. The framework argues that true victory doesn't begin with physical dominance. It begins internally, with the absolute surrender of the human will.
Okay, so once that internal will is surrendered, the timeline moves forward, and the narrative violently pivots.
Very violently.
It shifts outward to the physical body and the punishment inflicted by the Roman Empire. And this is where the framework begins assigning highly specific meaning to the different types of wounds, starting with the scourging.
Right, the second shedding of blood. Pilate has Jesus scourged. And we should probably contextualize what Roman scourging actually entailed, because it wasn't a simple beating.
No, it was systematic devastation. They used an instrument called a flagrum, right? A whip designed with leather cords that were actually embedded with pieces of jagged bone and lead. The intention was to strip the flesh from the back. It's gruesome.
It's beyond gruesome. It was designed to bring a person to the absolute brink of death before the crucifixion even started.
Wow.
And here's where the theology comes in. This framework reframes that horrific physical damage through the lens of an ancient prophecy. It points back centuries to the book of Isaiah, to the specific phrase, "By his stripes we are healed."
Okay, but I have a question here. Why does spiritual redemption care about physical brokenness?
What do you mean?
Well, I understand the concept of saving a soul, right? That's standard theology. But this specific shedding of blood seems laser-focused on the physical body. What are the mechanics there?
So you have to understand the ancient concept of substitutionary atonement. In ancient Near Eastern thought, blood literally contains life.
Okay.
The belief is that the spilling of innocent, uncorrupted life is the only mechanism powerful enough to absorb the decay and corruption of human existence.
I see.
So by applying this to the scourging, the theology argues that God isn't just interested in some ethereal afterlife. The divine is absorbing physical sickness, disease, and pain.
Oh, interesting. So it bridges the gap between, like, high-minded theology and visceral human suffering.
Precisely. It's claiming that the divine understands our physical agony on a profoundly personal level.
Which I think makes the third event on the timeline, the crown of thorns, even more complex.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the Roman soldiers intended the thorns purely as a cruel joke. They are mocking his claim to authority. It's psychological humiliation, like, oh, you're a king, here is your crown.
Yeah, it was just a cheap theatrical prop to them. But this framework takes that act of mockery and elevates it into a massive cosmic symbol.
By connecting it all the way back to the book of Genesis again.
Right, because what were thorns originally? Thorns were the literal manifestation of the curse placed upon the earth.
Right. After the fall in Eden, the ground is cursed to bring forth thorns and thistles.
That is the brilliance of the literary connection here. By having the thorns pressed into his head, he isn't just bleeding from a cruel joke. He is literally wearing the curse of the earth.
Oh, wow. And he's absorbing it specifically into his head, the mind?
Yes. The head represents the mind, the seat of human consciousness. The theology claims that Jesus was bearing the mental anguish, the shame, and the literal curse of creation in order to redeem the human mind and restore human dignity.
So the narrative is saying that the King of Glory wears the curse of the earth so humanity can be freed from it. That's incredibly poetic.
It really is.
So let's track where we are. We've seen the internal emotional surrender in the garden. We've seen the physical healing of the back and the mental cosmic redemption of the mind through the thorns.
Right.
And as our timeline arrives at the act of crucifixion itself, which brings us to events 4 and 5, the focus shifts again. Now we look at the specific body parts nailed to the wood, the hands and the feet.
Yeah, because the actual mechanics of the crucifixion involved driving iron spikes through the hands and the feet to secure the body to the cross.
And what stands out to me here is how compartmentalized this becomes. Like we said earlier with the prism, it creates this almost anatomical map of human existence.
Yes, exactly.
The framework claims the hands redeem what we do and the feet redeem where we go. So let's dig into the symbolism of the hands first.
Well, in ancient literature, hands represent human labor. They represent your service, your purpose, the actual tangible deeds you perform in the physical world.
Right.
Think about how Jesus used his hands in the narrative leading up to this point. He healed the sick. He broke bread to feed thousands. He touched lepers.
So if human action and human labor have been corrupted by greed or violence, the nailing of the hands sanctifies those actions.
Yes.
The fourth shedding is the blood of service and purpose.
It argues that our capacity to do good work in the world was broken, And this specific physical wound pays the debt to restore that capacity,
And then the fifth shedding targets the feet.
which in the ancient Near East, feet universally symbolized a person's path through life.
Their direction.
Right, their direction, their domain, their authority. The text pulls from imagery like Romans chapter 10. How beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace.
So if the hands redeem our actions, the feet redeem our trajectory. It's the blood of dominion and walk. But I want to pause on this anatomical focus for a second. Because why does salvation have to be so deeply tied to daily physical reality? It seems to push back hard against the idea that the physical body doesn't matter and only the spirit is important.
Oh, it pushes back entirely against that idea, which, by the way, was a very common philosophy in the ancient world. It was known as Gnosticism.
Gnosticism, right?
Yeah.
The belief that flesh is inherently evil and spirit is inherently good.
Exactly. Gnosticism essentially said the physical world is a trap. But by mapping redemption onto the hands and the feet, the framework insists that your physical life matters.
Your 9-to-5 job.
Yes, your 9-to-5 job, how you treat your neighbors, the literal direction you choose to walk in your life, all of it is completely wrapped up in this act of redemption. Physical blood is shed to balance the ledger for physical human actions.
Every step and every action is accounted for.
Every single one.
Which brings us to the climax of the narrative. As we follow the timeline to the moment of death and the immediate aftermath, we hit the 6th and 7th events.
The 6th shedding of blood actually occurs after the physical death.
Right.
A Roman soldier, just verifying the execution is complete, pierces his side with his spear. And the historical account in John notes a very specific detail. Blood and water flowed out.
And you might hear blood and water and just think of it as an anatomical detail, like a ruptured pericardium or something.
Sure, a medical detail.
But the literary architecture here dives into an incredibly profound parallel regarding that side wound.
It does. It goes back to Genesis one more time. The text looks at the creation of the first woman, Eve. How was she formed?
She was pulled from the side of Adam.
Well, he was placed into a deep sleep.
Wow. The open side of the first man.
Exactly. So theologians draw this direct, masterful parallel. Jesus, who is biblically referred to as the second Adam, falls into the sleep of death on the cross.
Oh, I see where this is going.
His side is opened by the Roman spear, and from that open side flows blood for redemption and water for new life. Just as the bride of the first Adam came from his side, the church, which the New Testament explicitly calls the bride of Christ, is born from his open side.
That is just. It is the establishment of the new covenant, but it's stunning how tightly woven that imagery is across completely different books of the text.
It really is an incredible piece of literary symmetry.
And that leads us to the 7th shedding, which isn't really a specific wound, but the ultimate pouring out of his life, the final breath.
Characterized by his final words on the cross. In the Greek text, the word is tetelestai.
Tetelestai, it is finished.
Yes.
It is finished.
And the historical context of that word is fascinating to me because tetelestai wasn't just a dramatic phrase. It was essentially a legal or a business term.
Right, absolutely.
Like, archaeologists have actually uncovered ancient tax receipts in Egypt written on papyrus with the word tetelestai stamped right across them. It literally means paid in full. Paid in full. It is the ultimate accounting word applied to a massive spiritual transaction.
So how does the absolute finality of this paid in full receipt answer the agonizing plea of surrender that started all the way back in the garden? Because that's where we started this whole journey.
Well, it's the closing of the narrative loop. Think about it. In Gethsemane, the sheer agony, the sweating of blood, that was the immense cost of agreeing to take on the debt of human corruption.
The garden was the acceptance of the terms.
Exactly. The final breath, the tetelestai, is the printing of the receipt. It's the declaration that the transaction is utterly complete. The separation between humanity and the divine has been removed, and the requirement of the law has been entirely fulfilled.
So we've tracked this chronological timeline through the 7 distinct events. But to really understand the mechanics of this framework, we need to zoom out a bit.
Okay.
We need to look at the significance of the number itself. Why 7?
Right. Well, in biblical literature and ancient Jewish numerology, numbers carry heavy symbolic weight. They aren't just quantities, they are qualities. Right. And the number 7 is arguably the most significant of all of them. It universally represents completion, perfection, divine wholeness, and the fulfillment of an oath.
You see it everywhere in the texts. The 7 days of creation, the 7 feasts of Israel, the 7 seals in Revelation.
So the core thesis of the sevenfold blood is that the shedding wasn't arbitrary.
Hmm.
The fact that it happens in 7 distinct ways symbolizes that this redemption was total.
It wasn't a half measure.
Exactly. The document quotes ancient letters, like Hebrews, emphasizing that by one offering, the debt was perfected forever.
It really transforms how you view the entire event. I mean, the Romans thought they were executing a state criminal using standard brutal protocols. They thought they were in control.
Oh, completely.
But this theology argues that absolutely none of this suffering was accidental. Every single wound, every instrument of torture carried prophetic meaning.
It takes what appears to be the worst of human chaos and cruelty and reframes it as a meticulously structured blueprint of divine mercy.
Let's retrace this architectural journey we've been on, just to put it all together for you listening. We started in the darkness of the garden with the internal emotional blood of surrender, the sheer psychological weight of the human condition.
Right.
From there, the narrative pivoted outward to the physical realm, the scourging that pays for our physical disease and pain, and the crown of thorns that absorbs the cosmic curse into the human mind.
Then we explored the sanctification of human action. The hands nailed to the cross, redeeming our daily labor and service.
And the feet redeeming the direction of our lives and our spiritual walk.
Right. Finally, we reached the climax on the cross. The spear in the side, birthing the new covenant of blood and water, mirroring the creation of Eve.
Culminating in the final breath, the tetelestai. The cosmic receipt marked paid in full. 7 distinct moments. Complete wholeness.
It's a remarkable structure.
It really is. You can see why the sevenfold blood of redemption provides such a compelling lens for understanding these ancient texts. It maps profound theological concepts onto the most visceral parts of the human experience.
It doesn't shy away from the physical reality at all.
No, it embraces it. But I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today. Something that builds on the sheer physical reality of this framework.
Okay.
We live in a modern society that goes to great lengths to sterilize and hide physical suffering. We insulate ourselves from it. We hide it in hospitals, we sanitize it.
That's true, we do.
If ancient texts universally view physical blood and visceral bodily sacrifice as the literal currency required for human redemption, what does that mean for us today? By hiding away our mortality and our physical vulnerabilities, have we lost the vocabulary to even understand this kind of profound flesh and blood sacrifice?
It's a heavy question to walk away with.
It is. But that's why we do these deep dives. Thank you so much for joining us today. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.